All right, let's dive into something that's, well, a huge puzzle right now. The world seems to be sending us completely contradictory signals. On one side, you see incredible optimism. On the other, just this deep-seated anxiety. So what is really going on here?
And that really is the core question, isn't it? How can financial markets be hitting record highs while at the exact same time so many people are feeling more worried than ever about the economy? Let's try and unpack that. So first up, let's look at the first signal, which is just pure euphoria. Major stock indexes like the S&P 500 have been absolutely smashing records, closing at heights we've never seen before. If you're looking at things just from a Wall Street perspective, the message is crystal clear. The future looks incredibly bright. But then you look at this, and the whole story just flips on its head. At the very same time, consumer confidence is plummeting. I mean, the index dropped to 89.1 in December. That's its lowest point since those tariffs on certain imported goods kicked in back in the spring. This isn't just a small dip, you know? It's a massive signal that the view from Main Street is a world away from the view from Wall Street. Okay, so to understand this huge divide, we've got to look at some of the massive forces at play. Let's start with the first one, a completely unstoppable tech boom, basically an AI gold rush. A huge part of this excitement is coming from what feels like a totally new frontier in AI. We are talking about real-time interactive video generation. You have companies like the Alibaba-backed startup Pixfirst just pushing the absolute boundaries of what's possible, letting users literally direct AI-generated videos while they're being created. And this quote from Pixverse's co-founder Jaden Shi really nails the long-term vision. He believes this tech isn't just some cool new toy, it's the foundation for entirely new business models. Think interactive shows or even infinite video games. It's that kind of huge, forward-looking potential that's driving a frenzy of investment. But here's the thing that connects this digital world back to the physical one. All that incredible software, all that AI magic, it doesn't just exist in the cloud. It needs a massive physical foundation to actually run. And that all comes down to data centers. And when I say massive, I mean the scale of investment here is just mind-boggling. Analysts are forecasting that building the data centers needed to power this whole AI revolution is going to create $1.2 trillion in real estate value. And that's just in the next 5 years. This is like a modern-day infrastructure supercycle. I mean, this quote from the CEO of Digital Realty, one of the biggest data center operators out there, it just says it all. The demand from the tech giants is so intense, they're literally struggling to build these places fast enough. This isn't just speculation. It's a boom driven by real, concrete, long-term contracts from the biggest companies in the world. All right, so that's one side of the coin. Now let's flip it over and look at our second major force, which paints a completely different picture. We're shifting from that tech euphoria to the anxious reality of the everyday economy and digging into why, for so many people, it just doesn't feel like a boom at all. So you have the AI sector just soaring, creating all this incredible wealth. But the broader labor market? Yeah, it's telling a very different story. Key indicators are pointing to a rapid cooling, and that's a huge reason for that disconnect we saw in the consumer confidence numbers. Let's break this down a bit. Monthly job growth has slowed dramatically. We're talking from an average of 168,000 in 2024 to just 49,000 in 2025. And then there's this thing called the labor differential. It's basically a fancy way of measuring how people feel about the job market. It's the gap between people who say jobs are plentiful and those who say they're hard to get. That gap is now the narrowest it's been in years, which tells you people are really starting to feel the job market tighten up. And honestly, this quote just perfectly captures the mood out there. Yeah, the official numbers might show that wages have technically kept up with inflation over the last couple of years, but for a lot of working people, it just doesn't feel like they're getting ahead. It feels like they're running in place. And this chart, it really drives that point home in a big way. For the first time in a while, the share of consumers who rate current business conditions as bad has actually crept up past the share who rate them as good. That's a direct reflection of that growing anxiety we're talking about. Okay, so you've got this tech boom on one hand and a stalling, anxious real economy on the other. Now let's throw in the third major force, which is basically a giant wild card getting tossed into the mix, politics, and its direct impact on stability and the prices we all pay. A huge source of this uncertainty? It's a growing battle for control over the economy's future, a real clash between the White House and the Federal Reserve. Now, the Fed is the independent central bank in charge of things like inflation and interest rates, and its independence has always been seen as crucial for keeping the economy stable. So this conflict, it raises some pretty fundamental questions about who's really steering the ship. You can see it right here with President Trump's direct attack on Fed Chair Jerome Powell. This kind of rhetoric, along with a criminal investigation into the Fed spending is, well, it's pretty unusual because it challenges that long-standing independence of the central bank. And that kind of thing, well, it can really shake up the markets as investors start to worry about the future of monetary policy. Another perfect example is this proposal to cap credit card interest rates at 10% for a year. The stated goal is to give consumers a break, but the warning from banks and other experts is that this could seriously backfire. They say it would force them to cut back on lending, which could make it much, much harder for borrowers with lower scores to get credit at all. And look, this political risk isn't just happening at home. Geopolitical tensions are also a huge factor here. The situation with the protests in Iran, for example, has put global markets on edge, especially when it comes to something that affects all of us, the price of oil. I mean, take a look at this. This message from President Trump to protesters in Iran is a classic example of how a single social media post, just a bit of political rhetoric, can have instant economic consequences. The message, which signals potential U.S. involvement, immediately sent oil prices spiking because of fears of a major supply disruption in the region. Okay, so here's the most important thing to get. These aren't three separate stories. The tech boom, the anxious real economy, and the wild card of politics, they are all deeply, deeply interconnected. The wealth from the tech boom might be driving up the stock market, sure, but it's not really trickling down to the broader economy in a way that makes people feel less anxious. And all the political uncertainty, it can affect everything from your interest rates to what you pay for gas, creating this feedback loop of instability. So if you put it all together, what do you have? You've got this incredible tech boom creating a ton of wealth and optimism about the future. But that's crashing right up against a real economy where people are feeling slowing growth and a whole lot of anxiety. Then you stir in a political environment that adds volatility and uncertainty to everything. And on top of all that, you have a global stage where tensions in one part of the world can change the price of gas overnight. So the big question is, how on earth do you make sense of all this? How do you navigate a world that's sending you such conflicting signals? Well, the billionaire executive Barry Diller has this really useful idea he calls creative conflict. It's this concept that you should actually embrace all these loud, conflicting signals, not as just noise, but as part of a necessary process to weigh all the different perspectives and hopefully reach a better decision. And that really leaves us with the final big question for all of us. In a world defined by what Diller calls creative conflict and surrounded by so much cynical noise, how do we learn to filter it all? How do we find the signals that truly matter for our own future?